All right, let's talk about Charlie Kirk. He's this really fascinating and honestly pretty polarizing figure in American politics. And he's the guy behind one of the most influential conservative youth movements in the country today. And this really gets to the heart of it. The big question we're trying to unpack here is what he's doing actually building something that will last, a real movement, or is he just, pouring gasoline on the fire? It's a tough one, so let's break it all down. So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the blueprint, how he built this thing from the ground up. Then we'll dive into his digital strategy, track his big pivot into the culture wars, unpack all the controversy, and finally try to make sense of his legacy. Okay, so let's rewind. The story really starts in a pretty surprising place. I mean, think about it. How does a teenager, literally working out of a suburban garage, become this major player on the national stage? It's a wild journey. So picture this. It's 2012. Charlie Kirk is just 18 years old, and he starts Turning Point USA because he's convinced that universities are just dominated by liberal ideas. And wow, did it take off? The growth in the next few years was just explosive. A lot of it thanks to these really provocative events on college campuses. But the real rocket fuel, that was the Trump era. Kirk got on board with Trump early, and that alliance, well, it was a two-way street that shot him into the big league. So you're probably asking, what is Turning Point USA, or TPUSA, as it's often called? Well, officially, it's a nonprofit. Their stated goal is all about getting students fired up about things like free markets and limited government. But, and this is a big but, what they say they are and what they've become, well, that's changed a lot over time. Okay, so how on earth did they grow so fast? The secret sauce, really, is in their digital playbook. This was the engine that powered the whole machine. And their method is actually pretty genius in a way. It's got three main parts. First up, direct confrontation. We're talking about things like showing up on campus with giant socialism sucks beach balls. The goal? Get a reaction, start a debate. Step 2, go viral. They became absolute masters of the political meme, boiling down these huge ideas into something you can share in a second. And third, and this is key, they just bypassed the gatekeepers. Forget traditional media. They went straight to their audience on Instagram and Facebook. And this quote just nails it, right? He got it. He understood that for young people today, going viral, creating shareable content, that's not just a tactic. It's everything. It's the currency of this generation. It's the whole ballgame. Now, this is where things take a really important turn. Because while TPUSA started out talking a lot about economics, free markets, that sort of thing, over time, their focus shifted dramatically. They moved right to the front lines of the culture war. And what are those battlegrounds? Well, you've probably heard them. Things like critical race theory, wokeness, cancel culture. Kirk really became one of the loudest voices on these issues, painting them as huge threats to America itself. He also talks a lot about how universities are being radicalized, and more, he's bringing in ideas tied to Christian nationalism. So what does it sound like when he's delivering this message? Well, his style is unmistakable. It's fast, it's direct, there are absolutely no apologies. He's honed this delivery to be deliberately confrontational. And here's the thing, his supporters love it. They see it as authentic, like he's just telling it like it is. But for his critics, they hear something very different, pure division. Yeah, and you absolutely cannot talk about Charlie Kirk without getting into the controversy. It follows him everywhere. So let's flip the coin and look at the other side of the story. The criticisms really come from all angles. There are accusations that he pushes misinformation on really sensitive topics, things like election results or public health. There are also a ton of questions about their money. How can they be a nonprofit when they're so involved in politics? And then there's the campus environment. A lot of people say that his rhetoric, combined with some really aggressive tactics by activists, just makes campuses feel hostile. And this is really where you see the two realities collide. Critics look at him and see divisive language, maybe even claims that aren't backed up by facts. But Kirk and his base, they see that exact same criticism as proof that he's winning, that he's a threat to the establishment. From his perspective, if you're not getting attacked by the left, you're not doing your job right. It's a sign you're over the target. Okay, so let's try to pull all this together. What is the actual impact? What's the legacy here? It's complicated. No one can deny he's had a huge impact, but pretty much everyone disagrees on what that impact is. And if you need any proof of the scale we're talking about, just look at this number, thousands. That is the number of young people who show up for TPUSA's big annual events, like their Student Action Summit. And we're not talking about a little conference in a hotel ballroom. These are massive productions, almost like festivals, and they've become a central hub for the next generation of conservative activists. So this really sums up the two competing narratives about his legacy. In the positive column, you've got this incredible infrastructure he built for young conservatives. He created a real pipeline for future leaders and proved that the right can absolutely engage with young people. But then you look at the critical column. The argument there is that it all came at a price. Deeper division, maybe reinforcing people's existing biases instead of encouraging real debate, and, of course, that blurring of the lines between church and state. And that brings us right back to our original question. So what is he? A visionary who gave a voice to a generation that felt ignored? Or a brilliant provocateur who figured out that stoking division is a powerful political tool? We've laid out the evidence from all sides. Now it's up to you to decide.